Chapter 1. A Rejection of Reality. Zalin sat empty on the worn-out couch of his dimly lit apartment, his thoughts feeling so far away from him, yet consuming his every faculty. He stared at the ceiling fan lazily rotating above him with a dissociated focus. Tracking a single blade with his eyes, he found his mind stuck in rote loops, repeating questions that permeated through his numb thoughts. Why was he such a pathetic son? Every revolution of the fan made him think the same things, trapped in the endless loop. Zalin, open up. Slowly sinking back into reality, Zalin recognized the voice of his cousin, Asher. He barely registered the visitor, not knowing how long he had been there. The persistent knocking echoed through the apartment, and the distorted silhouette of his cousin pressed against the frosted glass window, with his features obscured by the fading light. The outline of Asher's hands could easily be seen as his face went as close as it could to the window. Zalin hoped the dark home was enough to hide him. I see you, Zalin. Open the door. Come on. Asher rapped against the window. Mechanically, almost without thinking, Zalin rolled himself off the couch. His phone slid off his stomach, thudding against the floor. He had been scrolling for hours before it ran out of battery. Quickly, he stored it in his pocket. Finding his way to the front door, Zalin opened it a crack. The light of the outside world caused him to squint. Ash, Zalin acknowledged monotonously, looking him up and down. Asher had a Tupperware of food in one hand, a bottle of pills in the other, and a series of worry lines on his face. He quickly evaluated Zalin, his eyes zipping with increasing intensity. Zalin could only assume what his cousin was seeing. He had plenty to assess from the deep bags under Zalin's red eyes to his wrinkly, grease-stained clothes and matted, dirty hair. Asher sighed, closing his eyes and reopening them quickly. Zalin, are you okay? No one's been able to call you in days, Asher asked, throwing the door open and allowing himself inside. Zalin shrugged and closed the door behind him, dragging his feet to catch up. Asher looked him over for another few seconds before Zalin realized he'd been asked a question. Not really in the mood to talk, Zalin said, tapping his pants pocket that held his phone. He deliberately placed it on Do Not Disturb, but still kept it close, as the feeling of it in his pocket provided some comfort. Doesn't mean you have to ignore everyone, Asher said pointedly, looking around the apartment. The residence was shrouded in darkness. The setting sun cast long shadows in the rooms, none of which had any lights on. Asher kicked lightly at the small pile of pizza boxes at the foot of the kitchen counter, and made a face before forcing a smile and looking up at Zalin. The floor was littered with crumbs from various chips and their bags haphazardly thrown around the home. Candy wrappers and popcorn kernels gave the white kitchen floor an extra splash of color. Asher began to pick up the smaller trash immediately as Zalin watched impassively. You drinking any water? Asher asked. I guess, Zalin shrugged. That's not really an answer, Asher replied, frowning. Zalin offered nothing more. Asher continued to pick up wrappers, biting his lip nervously. We're worried about you, man, Asher finally said, dumping a small pile of trash in the overflowing trash can. Zalin said, his eyes and mind beginning to drift away from the conversation. I'm serious. We haven't seen you in days, can't get you on the phone. Have you at least gone to visit her? Asher asked. Zalin's eyes narrowed as he brought himself back, trying to piece together the puzzle of the question. Visit? You mean Mom? Zalin asked, his stomach lurching. Yeah, who else? Asher asked. Why would I? Zalin trailed, deciding not to complete the thought. It'll be good for you, Asher assured him. Zalin's lip twitched, and he turned away from Asher, lumbering back to sit on his indented spot on the couch. Asher pulled out the trash bag in the kitchen's bin and replaced it. He took the trash bag and leaned it against the front door before going to join Zalin in the living room in a seat across from his cousin. He flipped on the light, and Zalin turned away with his eyes closed, pained by the second uninvited guest in his home. He clicked his tongue in irritation. "So, you're gonna go visit her?" Asher pressed. Zalin sighed and laid down across the couch, placing a hand over his eyes to block out the light. "Zalin." "What?" Zalin snapped, annoyed. "You're gonna go visit her," Asher said with finality. He was no longer asking. "Why?" "You'll do it because I'll drag you there. We're gonna get you out of the apartment and help you. Not like you're even pretending you have anything better to do," Asher said, looking around the mess of Zalin's home. Zalin laid silently as Asher leaned forward in his chair, awaiting a response. He then breathed slowly, giving no indication he was still a part of the conversation. "Zalin," Asher ventured. "Yes, fine, I'll go. Just please stop talking, Ash. And turn off the light." Asher opened his mouth to say something more, but decided to shrug and accept the small victory. He placed the Tupperware on a coffee table next to Zalin, and the bottle of pills next to that. "Eat something," Ash said. "It's barbecue chicken and carrots." Zalin shifted the hand away from his eye, peeking at the container of food. His stomach groaned. He sighed and rolled himself up, pulling off the plastic cover and pointedly avoiding the gaze of Asher's satisfied smirk as Zalin took a big bite of chicken. "And take one of these." Asher knocked on the closed bottle of pills. "What is it?" Zalin asked, his mouth full. "Sleeping pill. You'll feel better," Asher promised. Zalin grumbled in disappointment, snapping a carrot loudly and rolling his eyes. Asher watched intently, making sure Zalin took a decent fill of food before bringing him a cup of water and opening the bottle of pills. Asher spilled out a single purple and black pill and placed it next to the cup. Zalin studied the pill. Its color was nothing like he'd seen on any medicine before. Rather than a simple two-tone pill, the two colors morphed together like a watercolor streak, making it look somewhat ominous and alien. "What is this again? This doesn't look normal," Zalin attempted. "Drink it," Asher asserted. Zalin made a face and drank down the pill, waiting for something either magic or tragic to happen, but instead felt nothing at all, which was about the feeling he'd had for days now. He shrugged and finished the cup of water, hydrating his body for the first time in a day or two. He pushed the empty Tupperware and cup forward, toward Asher. "Happy now?" Zalin asked. "Very," Asher said, finally turning the lights back off. "I'm going to take you to visit her first thing in the morning." "Whatever," Zalin said, laying himself back down on the couch. "Don't you want to at least go to sleep in your bed?" Asher asked. Zalin didn't reply. Asher went back to the kitchen and began the job of tossing the pizza boxes, trash, and cleaning the dishes for his cousin while Zalin stared at the slowly rotating ceiling fan. It spun endlessly, but wasn't moving fast enough to cool down the room. Although it was useless at this speed, Zalin felt comforted by it in a perverse way, like it was a kindred spirit drifting, instead of moving with any deliberate direction, something devoid of emotion, incapable of shedding tears. Zalin allowed his eyes to scan the walls to pass the time until his cousin would leave his home. He fixated on his college graduation picture. The image had been long neglected. A screen of dust settled upon it. There he stood with his mom, proudly holding his degree for the camera. Bachelor of Science in Physics with a minor in Computer Sciences. The image looked nothing like him. Every time he had seen himself in the mirror, a smile was the furthest expression. His mom's smile was radiant, something he wished he could have seen any of the past few days. Graduating at 21, he felt his whole life was ahead of him. Less than a year later, his life felt like it was already over. Zalin was soon breathing steadily, sleep oozing itself over his mind to take its hold over him. He enjoyed sleep, as it was his only escape from the typical feeling of his life. Ironically, it sometimes made him feel more alive to be in a dream. Like the many fitful sleeps in prior days, Zalin lost consciousness with dry eyes and a frown on his face. Suddenly, his body heaved as if it was dropped into a void. At first, Zalin believed he was simply experiencing the falling sensation that sometimes occurs on the brink of sleep. But as he opened his eyes, he realized he was at least 3 feet above the ground. He screamed and covered his face as he crashed into the ground. His heart thumped recklessly as he slid a few feet across the dirt before coming to an abrupt halt. Coughing, he threw his head up, witnessing a hulking creature towering over him. The creature felt colossal over Zalin, at least 2 times his size. Its standing wolf-like form was composed of gray ash, forming ponderous legs and nimble arms. Flames licked up limbs, climbing as far as its back and brightening the area like a signal flame, making it hard for Zalin to look at it directly. The gray, sand-like texture of its skin shimmered, forming pine-like leaves along its back. A silver, glimmering shell that seemed poised to explode like gunpowder. Its arms and legs were accented with crimson-red claws, as though permanently stained in blood. Deep red eyes fixated on Zalin, with tiny fire-like wisps flickering over the pupils, making them dance with bloodlust. Grinning widely, it revealed its jagged brown teeth. Zalin shuddered and slowly backed away as the nightmarish creature raised an arm toward him. A thin orange stream of light emitted from the creature's claw, resembling a laser pointer, and snaked its way to Zalin. Startled, Zalin yelped and scrambled away on all fours, terrified by the demonic vision approaching him with its wide, soulless grin. The orange light halted once it reached the point where Zalin had been hunched over just moments before. Suddenly, the ground swelled and erupted in fire and dirt, temporarily blinding Zalin with its intense flame. Zalin screamed in fear and continued to scramble as fast as he could in his unseen state, eventually regaining vision and discerning shapes once more. Zalin's vision was still madly disorientated. He noted the sun's height. It was too high for this time of day. It should have gone down right as he was falling asleep. His eyebrows drew together as he suddenly realized he was nowhere near home. Stranded in vast plains with sparse flora, in the distance, an old wooden town stood with an ocean beyond it. The climate was arid and warm, and the horizon appeared empty on all sides. He couldn't see his apartment complex anywhere. Everything seemed dreamlike, yet he felt entirely awake. Something shifted behind him. As his heart sank in his stomach, he remembered a monstrous creature had been next to him just a moment ago. He twisted his neck around rapidly and gasped. The creature had raised its arm again, and the thin orange light traced across the ground, landing immediately in front of Zalin's feet. Zalin looked up at the creature and then back down in horror as the orange light burrowed into the earth. The ground shifted beneath him, and he could sense the impending blast, swelling in anticipation of obliteration.